Hi everyone, this is Dr. Mike, host of the free iTunes podcast, Psychiatric Secrets Revealed with Dr. Mike, but that's not why I'm here today. This is another Saving Savvy episode. And today I'm going to talk about inexpensive, cheap computers. Now, why would I talk about such a thing? So any of you that watch this channel know that I'm a Mac user, and Mac and inexpensive don't go together. But I do a bunch of other things. And one of the things that I like to do is I like to combine different activities, kind of utilize my time efficiently. And one of the things that I do in the mornings is very early in the morning, I walk to a local Starbucks and I walk back. It's about 3.5 miles. Sometimes I go a little further. And when I get to the Starbucks, I buy some coffee, of course, but I also do some writing. So that's where I will usually write my drmikekuna.com blog, and I'll use a computer to post it up to my WordPress site and all that kind of stuff. And I didn't really want to carry my expensive MacBook back and forth on these walks because sometimes it's icy, sometimes it's raining, plus it's an expensive item. If I accidentally left it alone for a few seconds, I wouldn't necessarily want someone to walk off with it. So I started looking for inexpensive computers. But as you know, I'm a compulsive guy. So I wanted to look at all the different kinds of computers that were available, and I really wanted to compare them because that's a lot of fun for me to do. Now, I'm going to talk about 4 different categories of computers here that are all fairly inexpensive. But I'm not going to talk about what I call the bargain basement 250 to 350 15-inch laptop. These are often computers that you'll see in the Sunday flyers at places like Walmart or Best Buy. They sound really great on paper. They might have like a terabyte hard drive and big 15-inch screen. But my personal experience with these computers over the years has been absolutely terrible. They overheat, they fall apart, they run incredibly slow. So we're not going to talk about those. I'm going to talk about computers that I think are actually usable, although they're spec'd lower. So we're going to start out at the cheapest, and we're going to go to the most expensive, and then I'm going to give you a couple of different scenarios where I think that one would be better than another. But remember that all 4 of these would be just fine. So if you've got one of them, don't throw it out and get another one. These are just 4 different examples. And I mentioned these are all bought on sale. So this is the Hisense Chromebook. So this is an 11-inch Chromebook. Bought at Walmart for $118, normally sells for about $150 retail, or $150 just no sale. So can you imagine buying a computer for $150? So this particular computer, if we open it up, has a decent enough 720 display, nothing to write home about, but definitely usable. And actually, it has a pretty good keyboard, a so-so trackpad, but it has very lightweight, reasonably good construction, and very, very good battery life. Now, this is real-world testing, so I can't give you like 7.3 hours, but I would say between 7 and 8 hours with average use, not playing games. So the great thing about these Chromebooks is they require really almost no setup. You open them up, charge them up, log in, and you're on. You don't have to worry about viruses. You don't have to worry about updates that take forever. You're pretty much in the cloud only with these, but for most people, that's just fine. And they're just a really excellent option for people that have light-duty computer needs. So what's the next one? Well, it's a very similar one. This is an HP Stream. So if you notice, the form factors are kind of very similar. This one comes in a bright kind of blue, but they come in black too. And again, you're going to open it up and you're going to see that it looks very, very similar. You're going to have the 11-inch screen, 720p, a decent keyboard, a so-so trackpad, and fairly similar battery life. So we're talking about maybe 7-8 hours battery life using just kind of mixed duty use. Now, this particular computer comes with 4 gigabytes of memory compared to the Hisense, which has 2. This has a 32 gigabyte solid state drive or solid state memory on it. The Hisense only has 16, but they're actually pretty comparable spec-wise because this computer needs that additional memory because it's running Windows 10, and it needs an additional hard drive, or it's just solid state memory space because it's running Windows 10, which occupies a lot of space. So you don't get really any more, and in fact, I would say this computer definitely runs a bit slower than the Hisense. It's certainly acceptable, but it is definitely slower. In fact, it's the slowest out of the pack of computers that I'm going to show you today. The next one is, and again, I'm using this brand just as an example, but it's the Yeppo. You've never heard of Yeppo? Well, that's because you can't buy this in this country. So you have to go through a company on the internet like GearBest, or there's a bunch of other ones that they will ship directly from China to you. Now, obviously, there are some risks in doing that, right? If the computer's broken, you just can't take it back to your Best Buy and replace it. So you are taking some risks. So this was about $180. I think these normally sell for a little bit over $200. This has a 6 GB of RAM. It's running Windows 10, so that's actually 2 gigs more than the HP, and it does show. This has a 64 GB solid state drive. Again, that's going to make a difference. You get a little more room in there. It's nothing to write home about, but it's certainly more than you're getting in the HP. This has a 1080p screen, which is actually kind of bright and kind of good, and I like it. The keyboard is very good. The trackpad is definitely a step above. Audio is a bit anemic, but it's very thin. Look how thin this is, and it's very light. Even compared to these little guys here, you can just see, if I can get these on the screen, how much thinner this computer is. So it's a very sleek and stylish computer that's sort of looking, following the form factor of a MacBook Air, although it's running Windows 10. Pretty snappy little computer, I would say. Again, the caveat here is that it is not sold in this country, so there is a little bit of risk. I think GearBest sounds like a very reputable company, and I think they will take stuff back. But really, think about this. How likely are you going to try to send something back to China? I mean, this is not even like shipping it to a different state. So a risk, but a pretty decent computer. Lastly, for around $300, I bought this ThinkPad. Now, this is normally about a $1,000 computer, and this is a very fancy computer. It has a 1080p display. That's a touch display, a really excellent keyboard, a pretty good trackpad, and it even folds over and becomes a tablet. This particular computer has 8 gigs of RAM. It actually is sporting an i5 processor, where these other guys have these little mobile processors. They either have, like the Hisense has an ARM processor, like a mobile phone processor. The other two have little mobile Intel processors. This is running an i5 processor, and it has a lot of memory, and it has a 128 gig SSD in this computer, so it is really deluxe and it is a pleasure to use. Display is not quite as bright as on the Yeppo, however, but a wonderful computer. What's the downside, and how did I get it so cheap? This is a factory refurbished model from 2013. This is 2018, so it's 5 years old. So actually the computer runs perfectly fine, but because it is factory refurbished, and if you're going to get a refurb, this is Microsoft certified. You want to get something that's Microsoft certified, not just some guy who says he's a refurbisher. Trackpad's a little slightly strange on it, and I think it probably was replaced. The battery life, because this is a used computer, is probably around 5 hours or so. So enough for many of us, but maybe not enough for everyone else. And because it is a very durable computer, it's about 1 pound heavier than these other candidates. Most of those other computers are around 2.5 pounds. This one's 3.5 pounds. You actually do feel that if you're carrying it around all day, although it's really not a burden like a 5-pound or 6-pounder. So those are the 4 classes of computers. All of them are acceptable. So what would I recommend for who? So I have 2 actual case studies here. One case study is my wife, Julie, Dr. Julie, who has 2 PhDs but hates technology. The other one is my niece, Janine, my adult niece, Janine, who is not really, never took a computer course that I'm aware of, but is very knowledgeable and very comfortable with technology. So what would I recommend? So for my wife, Julie, who mostly is on Netflix and uses her computer for like Google Docs and does maybe some banking on it, some QuickBooks on it, I would actually recommend the least expensive computer of the bunch, and that is the Hisense. Why is that? Because she doesn't have very high needs, and this computer is never going to bog down on her. It's always going to run at the same speed. It's always going to have be virus free. It's always going to update automatically. So she could just open this thing up and use it. It's great battery life. It's super cheap. If she stepped on it or ran over it with a car, I mean, it's a little bit over $100. Second choice, I think, for her would be this one here. I think the weight kind of gets you and the shorter battery life, but this is just a wonderful computer at a very, very inexpensive price at around $300. After that, I would go with the HP. HP is the logo, right? I think this is the slowest of the bunch and the least satisfying to use, but it's certainly adequate. running Windows 10. The problem with these super slow or these computers that are really slow and don't have a lot of good specs internally is that even things like updating them can be agonizingly slow. When I first updated this computer when I got it and it went through its initial boot up, it took hours upon hours for it to update, where a faster computer would take much less time. Lastly, for her, I would recommend the Yeppo. Why? Because if something goes wrong, she's not going to send it to China. But what about Janine, my very tech-savvy adult niece? What would I recommend for her? Well, I actually would recommend, number one, the Yeppo. Why? Because it is sleek and slim, it's lightweight, it gets excellent battery life, the performance is very good, it has a great screen, it has a good trackpad, and it's really inexpensive. Now, she'd be taking a risk buying this, of course, but again, it was only $180. What would my second choice be for her? Well, I probably again would go with this ThinkPad for the reasons that I just mentioned for my wife. It's just a great computer. It's a great value. And if you're doing light duty work, it doesn't really make much difference if it's 5 years old. Those processors are plenty fast, and you're going to get good mileage out of it. What would I recommend after that? Probably the Hisense, just because it's so reliable and so simple. And then pulling up the back again, the HP. Perfectly acceptable, but probably the slowest of the bunch. And when you have something that's even a little bit slow, after a while, it becomes frustrating. So if you're looking for a computer, think about what your needs are. Any of these would work just fine for you. But if you tend to be less technical, go with something that's not going to require you to delve in and change in configurations or deal with viruses and all of that. And if you do decide to go with one of these Chinese ones, Yeppo being one example, but there are actually many others, you might be pleasantly surprised. These computers, I'm sure if they were sold under, let's say, a name brand like HP or so, I'm sure this computer would be around $400 or $500. I'm certain, because it really performs pretty well. It's pretty sleek, and it's also lightweight and has good battery life. So those are just my thoughts on buying cheap computers. I hope you like this video. If you like it, give me a thumbs up. If you don't, give me a thumbs down. If you would like to subscribe to this channel, I would really appreciate that. Please subscribe. It's very diverse. And I have a writing blog called drmikekuna.com, drmikekuna.com. And I have a podcast called Psychiatric Secrets Revealed on iTunes. Check those out if you want to. Bye, everyone.